From PBS NewsHour, Student Reporting Labs,
and WETA,
recording live from Austin, Texas,
on the South by Southwest EDU podcast stage.
This is On Our Minds
with Ashley
and Tyler,
a podcast about the teenage experience made by teenagers for teenagers.
Because we all need a place to feel heard.
There's a place for a cheer. Thank you. How are you doing, Tyler?
I'm doing so good. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. This is honestly a lot unreal, actually. Just being up here, being at South by Southwest EDU, this is an experience that I honestly never believed I would have.
We've actually been recording for several months now on Zoom, and so Monday night, like pitch black night, like dark night, was the first time that we actually got to see each other in person.
But yeah, this is our first time recording live because usually we're on Zoom. Usually we're in our own homes. We've got our own microphones. Usually my dog is barking in the background. Sorry, editors.
Or tornado. Or tornado.
Oh yeah, there was once a tornado warning, so I had to evacuate to the basement during the recording, and I had to carry my 40-pound dog downstairs.
Actually, my birthday was a week ago today, so yeah, just a little thing. And then, now I'm here in South by Southwest and freshly 18, and next week is spring break, and then finding more stuff about college information and everything like that. Go UT. And it's just like this month has become like it can easily get very overwhelming. And so I think that all of us need some kind of space, some kind of person, some kind of environment where we feel like we can reach out to someone else and get help. And it's very important to be able to have a support system in your life.
Absolutely. And that is why today's episode, which we are recording, is about help and support. And more specifically about honoring the people who are really there for us and sharing these stories of times that we needed help and got it.
We're both going to be sharing stories about people or times that we received help that we really needed it. And we will be asking for some audience participation later on after we share. But first of all, I'm just going to talk about my story. And so for the past, ever, it feels like I've been applying to colleges and trying to figure out that whole process, which if any of you know, that can be a very stressful and anxiety-inducing event. It's several months or even it's a really long time. So a couple of months ago, I was getting ready to apply to colleges or whatever, and those fees can start adding up pretty quickly, for applying to college and everything. And so I ended up only applying to one college, which I ended up getting into, thank Jesus. But I wouldn't recommend only applying to one college, obviously. But yeah, so during that time when I didn't know what was going to happen, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to get into college. I'm not going to get in that school. And every day I would remind myself of how stressful it was, how scary of a situation it was. And my dad would just tell me, you don't have to think about the future all the time. You just have to figure out how to go through today, and tomorrow will figure itself out. And that's another thing I'm kind of going through now that I got accepted into college. How am I going to pay for college, because college is expensive, to say the least. And he also reminds me with that, I think just seeing my dad, because he also graduated college recently, he went back to school, and that was something that was motivating for me to be like, I've seen someone in my own life do it and have a full-time job while going to college full-time. And if my dad can do it, I can do it. And so that was that's my story. Ashley, what about you?
First of all, thank you, Tyler, for being vulnerable and for sharing your story. And I think that that's something that I admire a lot. I mean, that's why I joined this podcast. My story is a little different from Tyler's because we wanted to show kind of the diversity of experiences. But even before COVID hit, I just wasn't in the best place mentally. It was very hard to do things. It was very hard to want to do things. I felt like I was constantly swinging between these highs of indifference and these lows of very intense self-hatred and depression. It had been a very long time since I felt totally okay. But during COVID, I found one of the most amazing friendships I think that I will ever have. And maybe that's a big statement to say because I am 16, but you guys know what I mean. So it's kind of funny because during middle school, my now best friend and I talked, but we weren't really in the same circles. During COVID, we started texting, and I can't really remember how it started, but since then, I just can't imagine my life or who I would be without knowing her. And I think that our friendship is something that we always work to improve, but it's always easy. There's just so much respect and support and love there. And I like to think that we make each other better. She spent like $100 on yarn to crochet me a blanket that she gave me like 8 months before my birthday because she can't keep a secret to save her life. She always offers me chapstick whenever she sees me. And at first I thought it was because she was calling me like really chapped, but she was like, no, we're just friends. Like, this is just like a thing. But she sends me texts to remind me of how loved and cared for I am when she knows I'm going through rough patches and probably can't even get the motivation to text her back because she knows I'll see it. And I always do because I choose her over and over to be my best friend.
Oh. Wow. Sorry.
Oh, can we take an intermission to talk about Tyler's wow? Because so during our recording sessions, we both have like these like little like words that we come back to, and Tyler's is wow. I find that so interesting.
Yeah.
And he says that in response to everything. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, like one time on one of our episodes.
It was, I think, Chen Chen.
Yeah, and you'd like had this like really great, amazing poem, and I was like, wow, you have such a way with words. And she just like talked about this poem, and it was just like so great and so detailed, and all I could think about was wow. Yeah.
So now that we've shared our stories, we're going to give you guys a little time to just jot down some notes or write out a story about a time when you were a teenager, ideally teenager. I know that might be a long time ago for some of you.
It's okay though. It's okay.
But I just want you to dig deep into your memories. Look, I'm gonna get canceled, okay? But I want you guys to go in and write a story about a time that you needed help and someone gave you support or help, or when someone else needed help and you provided that support or help. So we'll give you some time to do that, so just take as much time as you need. Are there any volunteers?
So way back in the day of the dinosaurs, when I was growing up, I grew up in a military base. My dad was Navy, and so they often were out to Westpac, be gone for 9 months at a time. And being a teenager in that situation and being an oversized teenager in that time was incredibly difficult. We know beauty standards now are just as bad, but constantly being bullied by about my weight, etc., all through middle school, all through high school. But the beauty of the military base was the community. You know, you said earlier about it taking a village, and that's exactly what it was. It was not just my mom, but my next door neighbors was mom number 2, and the neighbor across the street was mom number 3. And the love that they gave, and that every door was open every day, and you could come home, and if my mom wasn't home and I came home crying, one of the other 2 would see me in the street and say, come over, and they would sit you down with a cup of tea and talk with you and be there for you and hear you. And that community and that idea of any door was open, and I knew that I had a safe place to be and who would love me for who I was, regardless of it being my own parent or mom number 2 and mom number 3, who I still to this day call every time something good happens, because they were there for me then and continue to be there. And I encourage this room full of educators to be that person for others, because that's what we can do for this next generation of kids coming up, is be their community.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I teach where I grew up. And when I was growing up, I felt very average. That's how I would describe myself to anyone. Average build, average look, average intelligence. Everything about me was average. And I had a high school English teacher who gave us less rules and was able to empower me in my writing a little more, because there weren't so many rules. Didn't make us write a book report after writing a book, and would let us just write more of our thoughts with less rubrics. And I won her award for writing that year, and it was very coveted in our high school, and I really had no expectations at all going into it. Have you ever felt like it's the same kids that win the awards every year in your school? It was already predestined. was going to get it, and it was the first time in my life that I felt exceptional. And she passed away a couple years ago. And I want to tell you, educators, that what you do matters, because it still sustains me more than 30 years later.
Thank you so much.
I grew up as what we would call like a gifted child, in a sense, where they put you in a special class and they tell you you're really smart, and so you believe you're really smart. And when I got to high school, I realized that, well, I didn't realize it at the time, but I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression, and that showed up as like anger. And I wasn't like disrupting the class, but interpersonally with my friends and things like that, things were falling apart because things were also falling apart at home. And so it bled into my school, into personal relationships, and to the point where I created a situation of just being isolated, right? But I was still really smart. I was still varsity track, I was still theater, I was still, speech and debate and all these things. But internally, I was going through so much turmoil. But when I got to college, I remember I was still going through it. And now the extra layer of being a first-gen student in a college space. Youngest in my family, but the first to get a bachelor's degree, by the way. So I was at Howard University. The hero of the day was a woman who met me one time. And we spoke literally not about anything personal at all. But she looked at me and she said, well, it looks like there's something really deep inside of you that needs to be addressed. I forget exactly how she said it, but it was very beautiful and eloquent. And so I didn't go and get help that very day. It wasn't until about several months later when things came breaking, crashing down. But I did get help, and I remembered her.
Thank you.
First, something about me, and I'm not proud of this, but when I have any problem, I've never been the type to call my mom. Even since a very young age, if I have a big problem, my mom will be the last to know. First I call a friend, a sister, whoever. We were 6 siblings, and I don't know if I wanted to spare my mom of problems, but even today, if I have a problem, she will only know when it's solved. So now fast forward, and I'm a mom, and I have grown-up kids, and I don't know how or when it started happening, but I am the first phone call. When my kids had, when my daughter missed a flight, when my another daughter was mugged and lost her phone, I'm the first phone call. And I'm so happy to get these phone calls. Of course, I'm not happy that they go through rough patches, but I'm happy to be the person that gets the phone call. And so that's my 2 cents. When you get a phone call like this, remember that you want to keep getting them. And what's going to be your response to those phone calls so that you be the best support system, and then you will get that type of phone call again. And I love those times.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you to everybody who spoke. Thank you for everyone who shared their stories and was vulnerable. And just thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Everyone had amazing stories, and it just is really inspiring to know that people have someone that they can come to, or that they can be somebody that somebody can come to and get advice, or just have someone to talk to. And that's, I've said this a lot, but that's so important. Sometimes we can forget how important it is. Okay, so now we're gonna get to the credits. Sorry. Today's episode was produced by us, Ashley and Tyler, along with lead podcast producer Briget Ganske.
We also want to thank Student Reporting Lab's executive producer, Leah Klapman. Hi, Leah.
And youth media producer Becky Wandell.
Hi, Becky. And students from Rouse High School in Austin, Texas, who are filming this session right now. Hello, Rouse.
Our theme music, which you will hear in this edited episode, is by Jackson Teedens.
Hello, Jackson. And additional music by Blue Dot Sessions.
If you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources available at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You ready? This is Oh my gosh, that was so great.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.